This is another episode of Standup Comedy, your host and MC, celebrating 40-plus years on the fringe of show business. Stories, interviews, and comedy sets from the famous and not so famous. Here's your host and MC, Scott Edwards.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Hey, I have something fun for you today. A guy you've heard many, many times on my podcast. In fact, he has his own podcast where he teaches some of his expertise in communication. That's right. I'm talking about my good friend, Larry Wilson. He's got a podcast called How to Talk to Humans. If you get a chance, go find it. It's available on all platforms. It's a little more serious. He's talking about quality communication and how to improve your life through that quality communication. And you can hear him a lot on my magic podcast called the Magic Hat Podcast. But that's not why we're here. We're here because Larry has something very special to share with us. So let's welcome him to the show. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the top comic magicians, in fact, voted Comic Magician of the Year, Larry Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you.
Larry, you wanted to come on the show and you told me to ask this question, so I'm so excited to hear the answer. What really is magic?
What the hell kind of question is that? It's funny because frequently I get that sometimes people in the audience, when I was working in comedy clubs, especially, people would shout stuff out from the audience. And I would say to them, well, what do you think? When you think of magic, you, Scott, what's the first word that comes to mind when you think of magic?
Illusion.
Absolutely. The most common word. What are the words you think of? Illusion.
Trickery.
Trickery, yes. And?
Misdirection.
Yes, these are all sophisticated. Usually someone says something like bullshit. But that's a popular euphemism for trickery or illusion, right? But all of these words...
But that sounds more fake. And what I love about magic is that even though you're tricking somebody or using sleight of hand or using misdirection, you're still doing something for a specific reason.
Right.
There's a truth or reality to it.
Right. But what you're saying is so interesting because they all boil down to the same idea, that magic is something that fools you. Now, does that seem like a fair definition to you? Magic is something that fools you.
Yes, that's actually very true.
Let me ask you. There's an article I saw on online last week about a guy who had a heart attack in a dance club. Did you see this? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, but
guy,
I hope he's okay.
Well, he is. He is because, of course, that wouldn't be funny if the guy died. That'd be horrible. But it was like in some place, like in Chicago or something. Anyway, so this guy's in a dance club and is out there, dancing and cutting up a rug and everything, and has a heart attack, and they race him to. Now you're already laughing. They race him to emergency receiving. Do you know what the first thing they do there?
Usually they disrobe you.
But they're not trying to delicately. They cut away your clothing because they want to
save your life.
Right. And so
they need access to the body.
Exactly. So they cut away this guy's pants and find taped to the inside of his leg a salami. Now,
was he expecting a late night snack?
The only reason I'm bringing that up here today, Scott, is because this is something that might fool you, but that doesn't make it magic.
That's very true.
That's my point. Magic is more than just something that fools you.
Wow. That is a great analogy to explain the difference between tomfoolery and illusion. But I think the only one that was fooled was this guy thinking that salami tied to his leg would make a difference. That's just a sad and yet hilarious vision.
Yes, it is. And isn't that what we're always looking for in entertainment?
Ladies and gentlemen, magic in the pants.
Exactly right. Well, I don't know if you know about the great Fly Dini.
Oh, I think I remember, but why don't you share with the audience the great Flydini?
Steve Martin, who's started out when he was like so many other people, like Johnny Carson, like Orson Welles. All of these guys started out with a background in magic. They all love magic. And there are some top people online now, big wigs in tech and communication stuff in Silicon Valley, who are magic nuts. So this is a very common thing. Steve Martin, teenage magician, worked at the magic shop on Main Street in Disneyland. And
Yeah, good story.
could do all this great. Anyway, after Steve is like hugely famous as Steve Martin, comedian, actor, blah, blah, blah. I don't know why he decided to do this, but he had this idea he was going to create this act called Flydini. And he enlisted a number of well-known magicians to help. And what the amazing Flydini was very clever. I won't give away the magical principle because it might only, but I'm sure it must be online. I'm sure you can find it. The amazing Flydini, one of the things that Martin is so good at is non-verbally with his body language and facial expression, be able to convey a certain attitude. And so he has that attitude, that supercilious expression of the magician who's so polished, who comes out, and he unzips his pants and stuff starts to come out of his fly. And I shouldn't give it away because you should go and look at it. I can't remember.
Probably available on the Googler.
Oh, I'm sure it is. But incredible. Like at one point, a puppet comes out of his fly. And I can't remember what the puppet, but the puppet does some stuff. And then, or maybe the first thing is a helium balloon comes out of his fly and inflates and then floats up tied to a ribbon. And then the ribbon is held by a puppet who comes out of his fly. And
it goes on and on. But I think the point that you're making is that's a great example of just silly comedy magic. And Steve Martin, who in his genius took it a whole unique, special way. But what sold it was his presentation like he was a serious magician. Right. And I remember seeing that bit, and he would come out with just, the band's playing and there's pizzazz, and he's in fact, you were famous for wearing a white tux. I think he's in a similar white tux, or it might have been a black tux, but he was dressed to look like an amazing magician.
Right.
It was so funny. Oh, well, thanks for sharing that with us, Larry.
My pleasure.
And when it comes to crotch magic or misdirection or illusion or just being fooled, be sure to think of Larry Wilson.
Especially when you think crotch magic.
I think there's a salve for that.
That's a fitting epitaph for me. Master of crotch magic.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a silly few minutes with my good friend Larry Wilson. Thanks so much for listening. Larry, thanks for joining us on the show.
As always.
We'll be back next week with another one. Thanks. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Stand-Up Comedy, Your Host and MC. For information on the show, merchandise, and our sponsors, or to send comments to Scott, visit our website at www.standupyourhostandmc.com. Look for more episodes soon and enjoy the world of stand-up comedy. Visit a comedy showroom near you.